Let me welcome you to our webinar, UFI, the EU's Poison Center Beacon. Today, we are embarking on a regulatory journey, delving into the essentials of compliance under Article 45 and Annex 8 of the CLP regulation effective January 2025. Throughout this webinar, we will unveil the intricacies of the unique formula identifier codes and the poison center notifications for hazardous mixtures. Our goal is to provide you with insights into timelines, data regulatory, and member state-specific obligations. Joining us today, we have two distinguished speakers who will decode regulatory complexities and offer practical solutions for seamless compliance. Our first speaker is Dr. Lisa Hotzel Armstrong, that holds a bachelor's and master's degree in nutritional science. She furthers her academic journey by obtaining a PhD in genetic and environmental toxicology from King's College of London. And since 2021, Dr. Lisa has served as a scientific expert at JB Consulting as part of SynTech Research Group, where she tasks include risk assessment, dossier preparation for various products, and expert statement on toxicology topics. Our second speaker is José Luis Garrido Morales. He brings over 15 years of experience as an analytical chemist, specializing in pesticides, dioxins, and environmental contaminants. For the past decade, he has been deeply involved in the regulatory framework of the 1107 regulation and working closely with Spanish authorities and plant protection product companies. Before we proceed, please note that this session is being filmed and will be shared on our YouTube channel. And throughout this webinar, we encourage you to actively participate by asking important questions via the chat, and our speakers will address them during the talk. And afterwards, we'll be having a dedicated time for Q&As at the end, where you can engage directly with our speakers. While we do encourage active participation and questions via the chat, please understand that due to the nature of this webinar, we may not be able to address highly product-specific inquiries during the session. However, we do invite you to reach out to us via email after the webinar for personalized assistance, such as queries. We'll do our best to provide guidance on general topics related to regulatory compliance, but as I said, very specific questions should be addressed via email. Thank you, and without further ado, let's begin our journey into regulatory compliance.
Thank you, Andrea. Hi, everyone, to this first edition of our UFI webinar. I will have some words of our company. SynTech Research Regulatory Services are provided primarily by GAP Consulting, that is a part of the SynTech Research Group. GAP Consulting is a leading consulting company offering comprehensive registration services for the chemical industry in Europe and overseas with our network of associates. And our full range of services include general consultancy, data gap analysis and risk preliminary risk assessment, study monitoring, literature research, dossier preparation, organization and submission of data package, including sanitization, and dossier defense and expert statements. This covers agrochemicals, biopesticides, biostimulants, biocides, nanomaterials, feed additives, animal pharmaceuticals, and chemicals, all in compliance with the latest OECD and EU requirements. GAP Consulting has 25 years of regulatory and scientific expertise. Our 50 regulatory scientists and documentation assistants have around 10 to 20 average years of experience within a team or a section. Some numbers about our work: more than 1,000 applications on national level, more than 200 national applications of fertilizer and biostimulants, and more than 100 actives for EU PPP approval. SynTech Research Group is a leading global agricultural contract research, product positioning, development, registration, and market support services provider. to over 100 customers worldwide, including Gap Consulting and ECT. It has over 500 experienced technicians and managers working from its network of field laboratories and regulatory service location in over 40 countries. SynTech Research Group has present in North and Latin America, Asia Pacific, and Europe, Middle East, and Africa. As you can see, the presence in Europe is big with positions in France, Germany, United Kingdom, Spain, Portugal, Hungary, etc. Our agenda today will be switched into parts. I will take the first half of the presentation. We will talk a little bit about the legal context of the CLP regulation, some background information, compliance dates, what the harmonized poison center notifications, the UFI code, what happens if something changes, the member state specific information, how to prepare and submit a PCN dossier, and how Gap Consulting can help you all. First of all, I want to point out the legal context of the PCN notifications. It is the CLP regulation 1272 from 2008. In its Article 45, explains that the member states have to appoint a body that will be responsible to collect the information on mixtures placed on the market that are classified hazardous on the basis of their health or physical effects. The information will include the chemical composition of these mixtures. Often, these bodies are authorities which then give on the information to the poison centers. If exposure to these hazardous mixtures happens, the poison centers can give appropriate advice in the event of an emergency health response. In 2012, the Commission carried out a review to assess the possibility of harmonizing the information referred to in paragraph 1 of this Article 45, including establishing a format for the submission of the information. This review concluded that there is a considerable variation in the current notification systems, data formats, and country-specific requirements regarding the requested information in the several member states. This review also showed that this diversity leads to inconsistencies in the information available to medical personnel and the general public in cases of poisoning incidents in different member states. Problems to correctly identify hazardous mixtures in case of accidental exposures were up to 40% of the calls that they received. It was therefore appropriate to harmonize the information to be received by appointed bodies from importers and downstream users, as well as to establish a format for the submission of the information. All this was included in the Regulation 1272 from 2008 as this Annex 8. There's available an ECA guidance that aims to clarify and assist the companies, appointed bodies, and poison centers in the implementation of these new tasks and requirements outlined in this Annex 8 of the CLP regulation. Who is required to submit information according to this Annex 8? The information must be submitted by importers and downstream users. It is possible to outsource the notification to commercial representatives, like, for example, we consultants at Gap Consulting. The submission must be done before placing the mixture on the market, and this obligation lies within the UE, so an UE address is needed. Which mixtures must be notified? As we have seen, the Annex 8 requires the submission of information about mixtures that are placed on the EU market and are classified as hazardous based on their health or physical effects. Nevertheless, as you can see, some exemptions will apply. The mixtures classified only for one of the following physical hazards, gases under pressure or explosives, they are exempted from the obligation to submit information in accordance with this Annex 8. Also, mixtures classified, as you can see, for environmental hazards, only are also exempted from the obligation to submit information in accordance with this Annex 8 because they are excluded by the Article 45. Mixtures classified as flammable, oxidizing, corrosive to metals, acute toxicity, corrosive, health hazard, and serious health hazard have to submit information according with this Annex 8. The compliance dates. The compliance date for the submission of the information following the new requirements set by this amended CLP regulation applies in a stepwise manner according to the use type of the mixture. A mixture for consumer use means a mixture intended to be used by consumers, for example, craft or hobby paints. A mixture for professional use means that this mixture is intended to be used by professional users, but not in industrial sites. For example, it could be the decorative paints. And a mixture for industrial use means that this mixture is intended to be used at industrial sites only, for example, the automotive coatings. The importer and downstream user placing mixtures on the market not notified already under national legislation must comply with Annex 8 of the CLP regulation from the following dates. Mixture for the consumers and professional uses from 1st of January 2021, and the mixture for industrial use from 1st January 2024. If a mixture, for example, has several types of use, the earlier corresponding compliance date will apply. For instance, in the case of glue classified as hazardous for health effects and placed on the market for both professional and industrial use, the early date of 1st of January 2021 will apply. By 1st of January 2025, a submission according to the harmonized Annex 8 requirements must be made for all the mixtures placed on the market, existing and new alike. Before these dates, the mixtures continue to be subject to existing national requirements. What has changed with this harmonized notification? The country-specific requirements have been now replaced. Harmonized information is now required. The submitter shall create a unique formula identifier, the UFI, by electronic means. The UFI is a unique alphanumeric code that links the submitted information on the composition of a mixture to a specific mixture. The harmonized information requirement, the harmonized poison center notification, the PCN format, it's the Euclid format. It can be prepared in the ECA Cloud. The ECA Cloud is an online services that allow the EU-based companies to prepare and submit these dossiers in Euclid format. Working in this cloud, you can switch between the Euclid Cloud service for the preparation of your dossiers and the ESA submission portal for the submission. And the last thing that has changed is the harmonized submission portal. The ECA submission portal is an online tool for submitting legislation-specific information for, in this case, the poison center notification for hazardous mixtures. And these ECA Cloud services also include a trial version of the ECA submission portal that will allow the users to try out the ECA submission portal and familiarize with the tool. The second part of the webinar will be presented now by my colleague Lisa.
Thank you very much, Jose. I will now go on and continue by explaining you a little bit more about the harmonized information requirements. So first of all, it's some general information like the submitter contact details and a contact point. So you basically need to have a name, a full address that must be based in the EU, as Jose already pointed out earlier, a telephone number and an email address. On top of that, you will have to submit the product identification, which is both the trade names, but also any UFIs that you may have assigned to this mixture. I will get back to the UFI in a couple of slides to explain in more detail. And also the packaging types and sizes of your mixtures. This can be anything from very small bottles of 200 milliliters to maybe big barrels of 5,000 milliliters or more. 5,000 liters, I mean. And finally, on this slide, you also have to enter the product category according to the EU product categorization system. This is a new product categorization system where all kind of products and mixtures are listed, and you have to select your relevant product category, for example, a fertilizer or a plant protection product. Then finally, on this second slide, this is maybe the more interesting part, so to say, that needs to be submitted. It must be submitted the complete chemical composition of your mixture. And here it is important to remember that if the component of the mixture is classified for physical or health hazards, it must be declared if it is at or above 0.1%. However, if it is not classified at all or just classified for environmental hazards, it only must be declared if it is at or above 1%. On top of that, you need to submit the physical chemical information, such as the color, the physical state, and your pH value. And probably the two most important points are the last ones on the slide. You have to submit the toxicological information, and this must be submitted in the language or languages that were requested by the member state. And what I mean with toxicological information is more or less exactly what you would have in your safety data sheets, section 11. And last but not least, you have to declare the entire hazard classification and labeling elements of your mixture. So I want to dive a bit deeper into what the UFI even is. So the UFI, as Jose already said, is an acronym for Unique Formula Identifier, and it is a 16 alphanumerical code and must always be preceded by UFI. And this UFI code must be added to your hazardous new products or by latest 2025 to all the labels. And you can see here on the right-hand side an example product label that has been provided by ACA. And let's zoom in. You can see here that there is UFI written here, and then you have 16 letters mixed with numbers, and there are always 4 divided by a dash. And this UFI is actually created on a website provided by ACA with an algorithm. The algorithm works in a way that you enter your VAT and a formulation number, and then it creates a UFI for you, which is unique and can only be used by you. It is also possible to prepare a UFI code without the VAT number. However, the preferred way is with the VAT number, just so you are aware both is possible. And as the name already suggests, this is a unique identifier, which means if you have an update to your mixture composition, this unique identifier must be also updated, or if you add a new ingredient or remove an ingredient or change it in any way. But I'll come back to that in a second slide later on. If this happens, you will have to relabel all your products because it is really important that the products have the correct UFI code on them. So I want to show you on this slide a bit more what I mean with the UFI being a unique identifier. So as I already said, it is unique, so it can be only used for one mixture. So let's look at this example and say we have this one UFI code, and in this example, it was assigned to mixture A and also mixture B. So it is correct to assign it to mixture A. However, because it can be only assigned to one very specific and unique mixture, you cannot do the same for mixture B. So mixture B would require a different UFI code. Second of all, it is important to remember though, while every mixture can only, or every UFI can only be assigned to one mixture, you can actually also have mixtures that have several UFIs assigned to them. And I want to show you an example for this. Let's say we have UFI code number 2 and UFI code number 3. They can both be assigned to mixture C. This is completely correct and okay to do so. it happens often when you, for example, have a product and you sell it on, and then the person relabels it and wants to have their own product name and UFI code on it. It is exactly the same mixture, but maybe for some company reasons, you may want to have your own UFI on it, and that's absolutely okay. The reason why the ECHA actually implemented the UFI code is to be able to better identify a mixture, and that actually leads to a faster emergency response by the poison centers. Because now if there is an accidental exposure, people can just read out the UFI code, and then the poison centers can look it up in their database and find only one mixture for it. Then importantly, as it is this unique identifier, if you change something in your mixture, there may be an update required. This is all elaborated on in Part B and Section 4 of Annex 8 of the CLP. And an update of your poison center notification is required when you change your trade name or your UFI. You may have some changes in the mixture classification for human health and physical hazards of the mixture. Sometimes maybe there are some new toxicological information available, maybe some more tests that actually change the Section 11 of your safety data sheet that would also lead to an update of your poison center notification. Or you may actually change the composition of your mixture, add, substitute, or remove some components, or change the concentration range of some of the formulants. And it is very important that the update must be performed before you place the new mixture on the market. And I just want to point out that an update is a relatively simple procedure that you can do in the Euclid Cloud. However, if you have this scenario happening here on the right-hand side, that you need a new notification, that is actually a lot more work because you have to prepare a whole new notification. And that is required if your mixture composition changes beyond the allowable limits that are stated in Table 4 of Annex 8 of the CLP. And this is shown down here. So let's say you have a coformulant that is present in your original mixture between 25 and 100%. You would be allowed to vary it by 5% up or down, meaning if it's only within this variation of 5%, an update is sufficient. However, if it is more than that, you will have to perform a whole new notification. On the next slide, I want to tell you a bit more about the member state specific information, which is shown here on the right-hand side. This is a document provided by ECHA, and I will zoom in on this in a second. This is just to point out that it is relatively colorful, so meaning that while everything is harmonized, it's not exactly the same in all the member states. And I have just zoomed in on these first member states that are shown in the document, and I'm just going to briefly explain to you what these columns actually mean. So on the left-hand side, you always see the readiness of the member state to accept these notifications via the ECHA submission portal. And currently, actually, all the member states accept it except Bulgaria. Then there are some submission system options shown here in the second column, meaning that some may have it still open for industrial chemicals, the national system, but this will actually be all not relevant anymore from 2025, because in theory, all the member states should change to the harmonized format. This is probably one of the most important columns in the middle, which is the notification language. And this heavily depends on the member state. So we have a different color coding. Green means that you can always submit it in English. So for example, in Belgium, you have several options, but one of the options is English. So this makes the notification very easy. Same is also true in Croatia. You can do the application, the notification also in English. Then we have yellow, which means that you must notify it in an official language of the state. An example here would be Austria, because you have to do the submission in German, or Cyprus, where you have to submit it in Greek. Blue is the very, very tricky case, because it means aside from this one official language, you actually have to add it in a second official language that is not English. So an example would be Finland, where you have to submit this notification in Finnish and in Swedish. So as you can see, it heavily depends on the MS, and dependent on their requirements, it might be a bit more tricky or not to prepare those notifications. This column here is the fees for the notification. All the green ones means you do not have to pay any fees, and the yellow ones mean that you have some fees. And currently fees are charged by Belgium, Hungary, and Italy. On the right-hand side, this is some information about when you can place your mixture on the market. So in most countries, it's actually green, meaning you can perform the Poison Center notification, submit it, and then you can place your mixture on the market. But there are also some exemptions where you need to wait for some confirmation of the member states before you are allowed to place it on the market. And on my last bullet point here, I just wanted to point out that several member states actually request Poison Center notifications regardless if this mixture is classified or not. So it's kind of outside the scope of the Annex 8 of the CLP, but it may be still be required, for example, in some member states for all biocides, or if you show the national emergency telephone number in your STS or label. The last part of the presentation will be a bit more about the practical side behind the Poison Center notifications. And I want to start here by the really very first step is to set up an ECHA account. As Jose pointed out, it is for the ECHA Cloud services. And maybe many of you already have this account because you may have worked with REACH or you may have submitted some dossiers already to the active substance dossiers to the EU or anything like that. That would all be done via this ECHA account. But if not, it is relatively easy to register and prepare your own ECHA account. Second of all, the Poison Center notification dossier must be prepared in the UCLID. Put here in cloud, it's a lot easier to do it in the cloud. You could theoretically also do it in your server-based UCLID, but it makes it actually a little bit more tricky. So I went with the cloud example. And as you can see here, this is actually the Poison Center notification shown here data set. And all the infos that I told you about, all these harmonized information requirements must be added here to UCLID. So this is anything like this general information about the mixture, all the classification and label elements of the mixture, your info from the MSCS section 11. And also up here, there is some more general information like the member states you want to place this product on the market on and which language requirement these member states have, and so on and so on. It is important to remember that it seems maybe straightforward because all you need is your Poison Center notification data set, but it is actually a lot more complex than that because each coformulant of your mixture must also be created in UCLID. So that means you may have to create 5 substance data sets before you actually can even prepare your mixture data set. And even more tricky, sometimes you have to prepare coformulants that are so-called mixture and mixture coformulants. This essentially means that it is not, your coformulant is not a substance, but it is a mixture, and the name is mixture and mixture because you end up putting this mixture coformulant in your final mixture for which you have to prepare your Poison Center notification dataset. And this one, mixture and mixture dataset, is a lot more tricky than a substance dataset because you will have to add most of the information that you also have to add for your Poison Center notification. It's a little bit less, but it's more complicated than a substance dataset. And once you added all your information to the datasets, these UCLID datasets will be created into dossiers. This is done here with this button. And then once you have created your dossier, you can validate that dossier. And then if you work in the cloud, it is very nice because you can go straight from the created dossier to the submission stage of this dossier via the ECHA submission portal. And if you did everything correctly, you will get this nice message here that it actually succeeded. There are some validation errors in UCLID that lead to such big problems that it will actually fail. So if that happens, you would have up here a submission status of failed and a big exclamation mark. So you're aware it didn't actually go through to the member state. Or sometimes you have some errors in UCLID that UCLID doesn't like, but they will still let you submit this notification. This, for example, sometimes happens if you have coformulant MSCS that don't have a UFI code yet, even though they're mixtures and hazardous. But obviously, because 2025 hasn't arrived yet, this is not always the case. So sometimes this leads to errors that would not stop you from submitting your PCN though. And it's also important to remember that, as you can see here, it's only one country selected, so only Germany as the member states. But in theory, it is possible to choose several member states and do only one submission, and then you would have a list of countries here. However, you always need to make sure that all the correct languages are added to your notification. So I now want to kind of summarize for you how GAP Consulting can actually help you with the Poison Center notifications. We can actually be there for you along the whole way. We can already help you with a pre-submission support. So all our experts can check your hazardous mixtures and then advise you on what needs to be done. And then we can continue to help you along all the other steps. So we can help you by opening an ECHA account, generate your UFIs, prepare the Poison Center notification in the harmonized formats, and obviously also submit them for you, including all the substances, all the mixtures and so on. And we can also offer you a post-submission support. So if there were any updates or significant changes, we could also take care of that. An important part where we may also be of help for some companies is that we can help you manage confidential informations between two companies. So in some cases, a company may have a hazardous mixture and sells it onto a second company, but does not want to declare this composition. And we can be the middleman, so to say, prepare the Poison Center notification so the second company will not find out about this confidential information. And I want to finish on this slide with a rough price estimate. So first of all, it's important to point out that the price or the cost of this Poison Center notification is really, really strongly dependent on so many things. So basically, it is really dependent on the number of member states and also the kind of member states, so to say, that you want to do submission to. Because as I showed you a few slides back, some countries like, for example, Finland would need this notification done in Finnish and Swedish, whereabouts Germany only would require it in English, which is obviously very much easier than actually adding it in several languages of the EU. And it also depends heavily on the number of your mixture and mixtures, because as I pointed out, it's a lot harder to prepare a mixture and mixture data set, or not harder, but it takes a lot longer to create these data sets than substance data sets. And last but not least, it also heavily depends on the quality of the safety data sheets of your formulation, but also of the co-formulants, because depending on the information in there, it may be easier or harder to prepare the mixture and mixture data sets and substance data sets. So a rough estimate would be anywhere between 400 and 5,000 euro per product notification, and that doesn't include post-submission support. Let's say the 400 euros would be probably appropriate if you have a simple mixture with, I don't know, 3-4 substance co-formulants and, you know, a country with maybe only English as a requirement, then we could go for quite a low price. But if you have a mixture with potentially 10 mixture and mixture co-formulants and lots of different language requirements, then we will go more up to a 5,000 euro estimate. But again, this really depends on your product. So I want to finish this presentation today with a take-home message. So our current actual situation is that all new non-notified hazardous mixtures must be actually notified and a UFI must be created. And from 2025 onwards, the UFI must be created for all the hazardous mixtures and placed on the label. And this harmonized Poison Center notification that we just talked about in this presentation must be submitted to all of the member states where you want to place this product on the market. And again, we at GAP Consulting, we can help navigate this situation, and we can help you with anything from pre and post-submission supports and also perform the Poison Center notification for you. And please remember, this just came in from ECHA a few weeks back. From January 2025 onwards, not only is it really a legal requirement by then, so you should obviously stick to the legal requirements. On top of that, there will be also a check for 6 months by the enforcement authorities, where it will really be checked if all the products on the shelves have the UFI code attached to the label and all the Poison Center notifications have been performed for those hazardous mixtures. And with that, I want to finish the presentation and we can take your questions.
So we start our Q&A session now. I think, Lisa, you already answered this question, but Gerard asked, do we need a new UFI if we use alternate co-formulants?
Yes, so it depends if they have the same hazardous how do you say, if they have the same hazardous status, then you do not actually need to make any changes because that would not impact your overall hazardousness of the mixture, so to say.
Perfect, thank you. Claudia is now asking if you have a non-harmonized classification due to tox section in different countries, but the UFI is the same, because the composition obviously is the same. How can you notify through IUCLID? Should you make 2 notifications due to the different classifications, or is there a possibility to include both classifications in the same notification?
This is a very interesting question, and we have discussed this also internally because it's obviously in theory everything in the EU should be harmonized, but unfortunately in reality it doesn't always work out like this. And we had this case also previously, and unfortunately it was not really possible. Like we had to actually create 2 products or 2 product notifications with 2 different UFIs because Euclid would give you heavily some validation errors, leading to not being possible to actually make the submission.
Thank you very much, Lisa. If anybody else has any questions, now would be the time. I think Claudia is typing again. If you want, you could raise your hand and you can ask the questions directly to the speakers, if that is easier. Well, you guys clearly gave a very good explanation, since apparently there are not many more questions. As we said, if you think of any questions later on, you could email either Lisa or Jose Luis, or even the general JV account for any more consultations. And if there are not any more questions, that would be all for us right now. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you for the speakers for your time and preparation, and for the attendees for taking the time to be here with us. Hope you had a good time and you will join us in any of our further webinars, where we'll explain more about the regulatory world in the EU or worldwide. Thank you very much, guys.